Today on this episode of The Brain Surgeon's Take, we will be discussing From Navy SEAL Team 6 to Mercenary with Navy SEAL veteran and best-selling author Daniel Corbett. Learn how this once elite Special Forces member used his talents to become an ex-military operator for hire. As one of the world's most deadly mercenaries, Daniel now monitors international news and continues to entertain phone calls and meetings. Those who need unique solutions to unique problems. Much more on this podcast episode. Welcome back, everyone. Here's my take on Daniel Corbett. He is a real-life Jason Bourne or James Bond. As a decorated Navy SEAL, Daniel was one of our military's most highly skilled soldiers, completing several high-stake missions for the USA during the course of his career. But after his Special Forces tenure ended, Daniel decided to take his talents and become a hired gun as an American mercenary. What an unbelievable interview. Listening to Daniel's story was riveting, to say the least. As he himself says, I have seen situations I can never speak of. Hearing about some of his missions in foreign countries really gave meaning to the phrase life or death. Now a deadly mercenary, Daniel remains open to helping solve international dilemmas across the globe. Listen up as we discuss From SEAL Team 6 to Mercenary. Check it out. Hey, Daniel, what's going on, buddy?
How you doing, sir?
Listen, it's great to have you on the podcast. As we were just talking about your amazing story from Navy SEAL to American Mercenary, your best-selling book, American Mercenary, is truly gripping, and I hope all of our readers buy it. And I look forward to hearing your story. Very excited.
Well, I appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy the rest.
Let's start with, I guess the initial question that I'm sure you've been asked about a million times. Why did you first become a Navy SEAL?
So I've told this story before, and I have no problem telling it again. I was intelligent as a kid, so I hung out with the after-school special programs for all like the AP type courses, and it was mentally stimulating, but it wasn't fun in the sense of let's go to a party, let's go do this. And it was kind of like nerds. And then I was a really gifted athlete, but there was no intellectual side. It was just kind of meathead. So I'm like, man, where's both? And I saw the old video, History Channel VHS, and the guys were super fit, and the way they spoke just showed a level of intelligence. I said, oh, there's a combination of the two things that I'm looking for. And this is where I need to go.
Yeah, it seems like it's a pretty great crossover between, as we discussed earlier, the mental fortitude and then the physical toughness. Both have to be there. What would you say is the number one lesson you personally learned from SEAL training, and in particular, Hell Week?
There's always a way. And, when you get further in my book, or my story, I think that did so many good things for me in life, especially when you come against huge obstacles, knowing that there's always a way. Like there's always a way, and a big SEAL mantra is you're never out of the fight. Mine was just kind of like, there's always a way to get this done.
I love that mantra because I think that's applicable to pretty much all of life, no matter what you do. What is the biggest characteristic that is absolutely fundamental to becoming a SEAL, right? I've asked numerous SEALs before, what predicts someone getting through BUDS training, getting through Hell Week? And I always get a different answer, but they're kind of the same, general theme. What would you say, what characteristic is absolutely fundamental to becoming a SEAL?
You got to be a fighter. I think there's been a change in the demographic of people who want to be SEALs now because of all of the movies and books I'm guilty of, where it's what's the bare minimum I need to do? How many evolutions can I pass and still be a SEAL? Where my generation was, what's the record and who broke it? I'm going to crush it. Right? It's that almost that need and that love for conflict and wanting to fight and wanting the challenge. And it's another mantra you hear a lot is embrace the suck. And I even embraced the suck. Like, I like to fight in, every aspect you can imagine. So it's like, oh, this is a fight. Me running at this pace and beating my fellow bud students, that's a fight to me. So being okay, being confrontational and being competitive, that's what it is for sure.
Basically, never being happy with the status quo.
100%.
Yeah, there's always a way to do it better. No matter how good you do it, you can always do it better the next time. I love that. Love that idea. How satisfying overall was your career as a SEAL? I mean, you did it for many, many years. Would you say it was a growth period, and how satisfying for you as a human being?
Definitely a growth period. I joined when I was 18, right? So just becoming a young man through those years, you know, that in itself, you're growing up. And then, I mean, it was great. I got very lucky in the sense of my timing, and I was never severely injured. So I never got rolled back in training. I never had to miss a deployment due to a surgery or anything like that, which does happen because we do train to a very high level. But my career was super satisfying because my first deployment was to Iraq in the summer of '05. So, I mean, full swing. And, I knew that was a blessing, even though I was brand new, because instructors would tell us, like, hey, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've chased it West Coast, went to the East Coast, back to West Coast, and you guys are going straight to the show. So go do what you got to do. So yeah, the timing could not have been better.
Was there a singular moment that was the most satisfying part of your SEAL career?
Oh man, it's hard to say. I think when you become more into leadership and you start helping plan the op, and then you see it come together, and you see the helicopters coming, when it was your idea too, and you're like, oh, this is like really cool. You got to see the big picture of mission planning. That doesn't come until much later, because as a new guy, you're just making sure your rifle's loaded and it's clean and the trash is out, right? So you're like, okay, I mean, you're happy doing that too, but it's really cool when you start to see, different units and platforms all come together as you planned. It's like, oh wow, this is cool. It's very impressive.
Did your tenure as a SEAL change you in any way permanently?
Um, yes and no. And I was always like an endurance athlete, and I was always like really confrontational. Not in the sense where I wanted to fight everybody, but I just loved the dynamic problem solving that comes from problems faced in life and then in the military. And I had a pretty good sense of self of who I was before I joined. So the SEAL teams added to it, but it didn't define who I was. And I think that helped for a better transition for me afterwards, because I think people who identify as what they do as at a young age, as a young man or woman, and then they leave that, they kind of struggle to find out, like, what am I now? Well, I was who I am that happened to go and be a SEAL.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's a huge part of your life, but it can't be your entire identity.
Yeah, because
Um,
it's going to go away.
yeah, I think just like any profession, right? It's never permanent, and I think the people that allow their profession to 100% identify them have a problem stepping away. And it doesn't mean you can't love your job. Obviously, we all love our job, but it can't be 100% of kind of what makes you a person. And along those lines, you obviously loved what you did, incredibly
Mhm.
satisfying, like you talked about being in that leadership role. Why did you ultimately step away from the SEALs?
Oh, a bunch of reasons. Um, the 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 political climate was changing on how we were to conduct operations. I don't want to get political, but things were not being implemented to ensure our safety, and there was huge examples of certain leadership positions questioning, like, do you guys not trust us for us to do our job correctly and make the right decisions? And the biggest one is I found out due to a paperwork shuffle that I missed the huge re-enlistment bonus. I thought, I'm like, oh, I'm for sure getting this. Everyone's driving around in lifted Jeeps and Camaros. I'm like, oh, sweet, let's go. Let me go to the career counselor office. And she's like, yeah, no, you missed it. I'm like, okay. With the culture starting to slow down in the sense of us not being able to work how we had for me in the beginning of my career, and then the financial situation, me missing that opportunity to reenlist at that rate, as well as the pay scales in the civilian world, it just made sense.
It just made sense. And along those lines, what did you consider? What professions did you consider upon leaving the SEALs? Were there like 3 or 4 that you heavily were into?
So when I found out that I wasn't up for my reenlistment bonus, I said I'm getting out. Almost out of spite and out of principle, I said I'm getting out, and I had no plan. I had zero plan, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I didn't really know how good I actually had it, because there's not one thing I would love to do all the time. Like, I wouldn't want to skydive every day, and I wouldn't want to shoot guns every day. But in the SEAL teams, do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and there's that cool constant rotation where nothing really gets stale. So I had no plan.
So you had no plans. Wow.
Zero.
Which is amazing, right? Because you've worked so hard to become a SEAL. You love what you do. You're so talented, and you're one of the most highly trained soldiers in the world. And then you leave. And so tell us a little bit about how you first learned about and got interested in becoming a mercenary. Was that they contacted you? You contacted them? Was it serendipitous?
More or less. I think, to clear up the verbiage. So I was a contractor and doing security on the big boats coming through the Suez Canal, container ships, XYZ. And it was pretty boring / static. And I got a call from some guys who were ex-special forces guys and said, hey, you're out of the military, right? I said, yes, what's going on? And we're doing some cool stuff. Are you interested? And at that point, I was looking for something. I liked the go away for a little bit, make a bunch of money, relax, be on your own schedule. So I liked that aspect of it. But the job I was doing, writing the container ships, was pretty lackluster. So I had a couple meetings and I said, yeah, let's do it. So yeah, there's no Craigslist ad or LinkedIn post or Indeed. It's a pretty small community, and people will get a phone call from someone they know in politics or private governments, and then they suss it out, see if it's all kosher and legal and the paperwork and the money's good. And then if it goes through, then you start to put a team together. So I was one of the team members that got put together.
Now, for our listeners who maybe have heard the word mercenary or used the word mercenary, what is the definition of a mercenary?
So definition of mercenary is that you're not really fighting for under a flag or a country. You're fighting for money. You're a professional soldier. You're a hired gun.
And those can be politically motivated. They can be culturally motivated. All different types of reasons why someone would hire you.
And it could also be a legal workaround, right? It's like, hey, we can't go do this, but a random civilian can, right? So
Gotcha.
It's just another option.
And I think you just alluded to it. Obviously, when you're a soldier for hire outside of the military, there's a lot of morals and ethics of being a mercenary. And I'm sure when you first started, did those weigh on you at all? Was there a way that you dealt with the morals and ethics, and still do, as being a mercenary?
It's a great question, and it's actually opposite. So in the SEAL teams, you just go. This guy's a bad guy. Okay. I mean, am I going to say maybe one of the bad guys was maybe just a farmer? Probably. I don't know. I don't lose sleep over it. But it wasn't like we could say, I don't think so. I don't think he's bad. Let's not go. But as a mercenary, you can say, no, I'm not doing that, because I don't answer to anybody. So morally, it's actually flipped, where I can say, I'm not doing that. And in this game, you say no way more than you say yes for many reasons. So actually, it's actually flipped because I have final say. I'm not doing that.
That's really interesting. So what okay, so they're giving you options for missions and you are proposed with a certain amount of pay. For you, I guess first question, what percentage of the jobs that you get offered do you actually take up? And second of all, what is the most important thing for you when you're selecting a mission? The money or the international implications behind it?
So first off, it's not you. There's an array of missions. Like, hey, these are the 10 things we have going on. It's hey, this is my. They're really cutesy about it too. Like, hey, I have this thing going on, and you go, okay. Well, how would you? And it's like, hey, what are you asking me? Because everyone kind of dances around everything. So I'll get about 4 calls every 2 years, and through my own scrutiny, I will only take 0.5. Right, I'll take one call. I'll do one thing in 4 years, because so many things have to be correct. One, the client has to be real. What I mean by that is it can't be like, I have a bunch of money and I don't like this guy, or like, my wife kidnapped my kids. Can you go get them? It's like, like, is this a personal issue? Why don't you call the police? Right? Like, there's a lot of weird stuff out there. So first, client has to be real. 2, it has to be clean, right? And then 3, the money has to be worth it. And 4, timeline. Like, hey, will you go trade my guys for $200 a month for 8 months? Like, absolutely not. Right.
Of course. Now, what about equipment, right? I mean, you're used to being a Navy SEAL where you have the greatest equipment on the planet Earth.
Yeah.
Now, as a mercenary, is it just your own equipment? You got to go out and buy it? You getting it from somewhere? I mean, how high level is
So
the equipment?
when you actually are, 2 things. If you're going to go do, let's say, a nation that's friends with the U.S. and they want to put together a training program for their guys, the client needs to provide everything, and that's what keeps everything clean, right? Like, you provide this, I'll work in this capacity, and then if I'm doing something where, let's say, I just need to go take pictures of somebody, I'll bring my camera. Or if I want to track somebody down, I'm not going to go to said location with GPSs and stuff. You just kind of got to figure it out and create your own stuff. And the first time I rolled out the door privately, it was a huge wake-up call. I didn't know, because my whole adult life I've been in the SEAL teams, and the best night vision. Oh, that one broke. Here's another one. Suppressors, the whole 9 yards. So going from that to figure it out, it was a shock, but at the same time, that deep thing inside of me liked it, right? It's that conflict. It's that there's always a way. So I was like, okay, let's do it. Let's figure it out.
That's super interesting. You in 2017, you got arrested in Serbia when the government thought you were there to assassinate the president.
Mm-hmm.
And then you subsequently spent a year and a half in a Serbian jail. Tell us how bad that was and how you eventually got your freedom.
So bad in what sense?
I mean, what was the treatment like?
The treatment was fantastic.
That's awesome.
I mean, the treatment of the court was back and forth. The treatment of the other prisoners in there was great, and that's for 2 reasons. One, Serbia is a very homogeneous country. They're all Orthodox. There's no there's soccer hooligan gangs, but there's no, oh, your skin's that color, your skin's this color, even though, I mean, that's no reason to hate anybody. It's ridiculous. But like, there's not even the option for that in Serbia, right? So there's that. There's the second part is it's us versus them in there, us being the incarcerated, them being the system. And then third, the newspapers beat me to the prison. And the newspaper said I was there to kill their president. And come to find out, everybody in prison and everybody who's a prison guard hates the president. So as soon as I walked in, I was like lauded as this hero. I just kind of rolled with it because it worked in my favor. The food was horrible and the court was ridiculous, but in the end, justice prevailed. So it took a long time, but we got through it.
How do you feel that SEAL training prepared you to be a mercenary? How are they similar and how are they different? You mentioned before, obviously the equipment is completely next level and the missions are much more concrete. I guess when you're a SEAL, you're just following orders. But how well did being a SEAL train you to be a mercenary?
I think I don't think being a SEAL trained me to. I think being a SEAL helped me develop and flex those muscles of problem solving, critical thinking. Never out of the fight. There's always a way. Because yeah, to go to that line of work, you need to be able to shoot a gun, X, Y, Z. But that's so inherent that no one even talks about that. Like, yeah, of course you can do X, Y, and Z. Um, can you get that person to let you into their house that's a stranger within 20 minutes at a coffee shop? Like that kind of stuff. So being a SEAL definitely helped with, building those muscles of critical thinking and problem solving, leadership. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned when you left the SEALs, you had no plans, and I think that there's a recurring theme amongst people in the military that they have trouble getting back to civilian life. People who are in the
Mm-hmm.
military at such a high level, especially like you. Do you feel that your decision highlights that struggle and how many people don't know what profession to take when they leave special forces?
Yeah. And here's the thing. That's a double-edged sword too, right? Because we're all adults and you need to take accountability. I'm like, oh, they didn't tell me what to do after. Yeah, I know, because we're in America. Go figure it out. Um, Look, the military is a big machine, and they do a course for people when you get out. And you can be a janitor or a SEAL. You still go to the same course. It's 5 days. They teach you how to tie a tie, how to write an interview, and they give you the top 100 companies that are vet friendly, like USPS, Union Pacific Railroad. Just like a very. This is to say you can't say we don't care about you, and it's like, man, what do you even do with this? And I think and there are new programs coming out that are really like finance and corporate oriented, where you pay a little bit of money and then you do this, I don't know, however month long training, and then you go do trips in these big cities and there's job placement. And I think that's great. But I think what people don't understand is that guys from my community and guys in the special forces community who are doing all this critical thinking, all this problem solving, they're actually more left brain than this right brain garrison businessman. Yes, sir. And I'm going to go work in my cubicle. They're more like, I want to be creative. I want to figure this out. I want to plan this mission. And a lot of people, when I say this, a lot of people are kind of in shock, like, oh, I thought you guys were rank and file. I said, we're actually the opposite. And I think when people get out and they go, oh, that's 3 times as much a month than I was making in the SEAL teams. This is great. And then they realize it's kind of a spiritual suicide because they're sitting in a cubicle. And I think there needs to be more avenues, or at least more awareness to the avenues of the artistic side and the creative side for guys that are especially getting out of soft communities.
Yeah, I've and we mentioned before, I think you're the 10th or 11th SEAL that I've been fortunate enough to interview, and every SEAL that I've interviewed has gone on to an incredible leadership position. Like you were saying, kind of freedom of thought, creativity, and I think that's a skill set that you guys have going into the SEALs, and then it only gets embellished through the training and then through the missions. What would you tell a young adult if you could go back, Daniel Corbett, back when he was 18, if another young adult's like, I want to be a SEAL, would you support them? And if so, what would be your biggest piece of advice?
Here's the generic answer. I'll say, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. And there's only one right reason. It's for yourself. And I was like, oh, about country, or like Jenny broke up with me, or my dad never said I was good enough. Sure, but that's not going to get you through a year and a half of training. SEAL training is too long for that. It has to be for you, 100%. And then in this last 2 years, I've had 2 kids reach out to me in the area where I live, and they go, I want to be a SEAL. And I go, why do you want to be a SEAL? because I want to operate overseas. I said, well, did you grow up on a fishing boat? Like what? Like why SEAL? I don't know. And then you throw them in the water and they can't swim. It's like maybe you can go do other stuff. Like there's Army Rangers out there that are like getting it on. So like maybe that's for you. You can't even swim, bud. So make sure you're doing it for the right reasons and make sure in which is doing it for you. And is SEAL the right one for you? Just because of the movies and stuff? Like maybe that's not even really what you want. Do your research, give it a fair shake, look at all the communities, because I've worked with most all of them and they're all amazing. So you're not going to lose if you join any of them.
You've accomplished so much already. And looking ahead, what do you think is your next big challenge professionally?
Next big challenge is going to be continuing my entrepreneurial endeavors. Right now, I'm going to the tech side with an app I'm in development with, and being humble, learning how to talk to my programmer, and just telling, hey, I don't know, show me, teach me, what do we need to do next? And I think just continuing to grow and learn more about that space is the biggest challenge right now.
Daniel, what a great interview. For those listeners who didn't hear it early on, your best-selling book, American Mercenary, amazing, goes over your whole, there it is, goes over your whole story. Kudos to you, obviously as a SEAL, instant street cred. I love the drive. I love the grit. I love there's always a way. I'm actually going to incorporate that into my daily living. I love that saying. And again, just kudos for all you've accomplished at this point in your life and your leadership skills. And you're obviously a great role model for many, many young individuals in this country. So much respect, buddy.
Well, it says the doctor, the brain doctor. I appreciate it. Thanks for what you do.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate your time. And we'll talk soon again. All right. Congrats.
Yeah, let's do it. Thank you for having me.